This is just a quick video for the Cornerstone staff. In January, we're going to begin the process of implementing CCB. And one of the things that we're going to do in CCB is begin to put the things that we do, our processes, into CCB. When I talk about a process, what I really mean is just simply a steps or a process through which you want people to travel. So there would be a start of the process, there would be a finish of the process, and then in between there are going to be steps that people would go through. There'd be the first step, second step, third step, and so forth. And what I'd like the staff to begin to think about is, what are these processes? What are the processes that we have? What are the steps that we have people at Cornerstone go through as they become more connected to our church? What are the processes they go through? As you think about the processes, what I want you to begin to do is think about the steps. So you might have, let's say somebody first visits the church. What is our process for a first-time visitor? So you would have, step one. What's the second thing we want to have happen? What's the third thing that we want to have happen? What's the fourth thing we want to have happen, and so forth. So I'd like you to think through what those steps are. And so you want to think out what happens in that step. What are the things that take place? So you want to think about two things. First, what happens, right, or what takes place in that step. So what takes place in that step. And then second of all, who is responsible? Who's the responsible person who is going to oversee that step? And so for every step, you want to be able to answer those two questions. What's going to take place in that step? What is the person going to do? What is Cornerstone going to do? What happens during that process? And then who's responsible for making sure that process takes place? So what I'd like you to do is think about the ministries over which you have oversight, or the things in which you're involved at Cornerstone, and just begin to think through those steps and make some boxes and outline, and for each box answer those two questions. What happens in that step? Do we send a letter? Do we talk to the person? Is there a form they fill out? All those kinds of things would go into that step. What I want to do, second of all, is just give you a bit of a flavor of once these steps are created, what they look like in CCB. So I'd like us to flip over to the process section. Now, I don't expect staff members to have to learn the process of creating steps or creating processes. You may eventually want to do this, but I plan to basically help you with the process. But let's go ahead and show you what one looks like to kind of give you an idea. And what you'll see is you will see a process, and then this is called the new guest follow-up, so very similar to what we looked at before. This is following up with a new guest, and these are the steps. Now in CCB, they refer to these steps as queues. So when a person first, the first thing that person does, they queue up in the first step. They go into that queue, and then they are processed in that queue. And when the person who's responsible is done, they will check that person off, and they go to the second step. So we go from the first step, the thank you letter, the call from the outreach volunteer, invite to meet the pastor, outreach team visit, and so forth. Now let me show you what these steps actually look like. Let's just click on the thank you letter. This will give you an idea what the steps look like. So click on thank you letter. And what you see here is you see the relative timing, how long should it take for the step? 1 day. Will there be email notification, default email, welcome? There's going to be an email sent out, parent process, new guest follow-up. And then it describes the process. It says this letter is sent by our volunteer letter team to thank the new guests, and so forth. It describes the process. And then here, when I click on Queue Managers, it will tell me the name of the person or persons that are responsible for that process. And the nice thing about this is that whenever someone is entered into the process, they begin the first step of the queue, the first queue in the process, the person who's responsible for that part of the process is then notified. And then I can monitor, if you look to the right side, I can see that in this first queue, this first step in the process, there are 3 people who've started, there are 11 people who are done in this. So I can see that we've got some people who are starting this process, but they haven't quite finished this process yet. So that would be something that I might want to look at. If I want to see who those people are, I can click on this people button. If there are any people assigned to me in this queue or in this step, I will see their names there. But if I want to see other people's responsibility, I can click on search, and I can simply leave it on not done, and I can go assign to anyone. And with a real quick search, hit search. And now I get a nice quick list of all of the people who are not yet done. And I can see who is responsible for that. And if I want to check with Coleman Holloway here and find out what's going on, I can see the due date. This is quite overdue. It was July 16th. But it gives you a way to look into the processes, the things that are happening in our church electronically. And all I'd like you to do at this point is to begin to think about the processes that you want to place into CCB. What takes place in that response, in that thing, who's going to be responsible for that process taking place. So I hope you have a fun time doing this. Just begin thinking, what are some steps that people go through in the ministry for which you're responsible?